Hi felters, crafters and newbie felters. Welcome to the Felt Hub with Lincolnshire Fen Crafts. I am Sandy and today I've got a great tutorial lined up for you. We're going to be making this beautiful Herdwick sheep. One of my favourites. Started making these way back in 2014 and never got tired of it. So I'm going to show you how to make that step by step, as well as some really good techniques for different types of top coats, finishing touches, more advanced tutorials. But the joy with this is you can keep it really simple or as detailed as you wish. So this is really a great beginner's project. Make sure you subscribe below so that you don't miss any notifications, and I'll see you in the Felt Hub. So we're going to start with a basic body shape. Now I'm going to use wool tops, which is slightly different to carded wool insofar as it's processed differently. So you've got longer fibres with the wool tops and shorter fibres with the carded wool. Doesn't matter what you use, but if you are using wool tops, make sure it's a coarse wool. Avoid merino because it will take forever to felt. It's just not suitable for this kind of project. I'm using a really nice coarse wool top. Important thing is, when you start, we're going to create a nice, simple, basic body shape like this for the sheep. And as you can see, that's squishy, but still retains its shape. So that's the kind of feel you're going for. And to create that, you need to start by rolling up the wool really tightly. Can you see how tight that is? It's like a little sort of sausage shape to start with, and it's really tightly felted. If you leave it loose like this, you will spend forever trying to get that shape right. So let's start as we mean to go on. We're turning in those ends as we go and keeping our fingers, we're really putting pressure on with our fingers. Turning, we're not using the felting needle at all yet. I'm going to be using a 38 star felting needle, which is a really good all-rounder and completes most projects from start to finish. I'll pop all the links for everything I mention here today in the description down below. And there are some great tutorials as well. So as you can see, I've got, quite a good size there going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 38 star needle. If you want to use finger guards, I would always recommend them. I'm just used to not using them now, but they will protect your fingers. And continue to felt those sides in. Remember to keep it nice and firm. And again, pop it back around the other way. Look how firm this is remaining. Getting in those edges. If you wanted, you could use your multi-tool if you have one, but it's not necessary. Just speeds up the process a little bit. But as I said, with most projects, this 38 star is a good all-rounder. And when you're doing finer details, then you'll probably use something like a 40 gauge needle. But there are lots of tutorials on the Felt Hub YouTube channel, so you can find all of those in there, and I will pop some links in the description as well. You can see that's coming along nicely now, almost there. We've almost got all our wool used, but if you're working from a kit or you have a template and size guide, you can obviously use that, and that will make sure and help that everything is in proportion. But you can do it by eye. But as you can see, that shape's coming along nicely there. This is the Herdwick sheep kit that is available on the website. But if you have all the wool and the tools, you don't need that. You can just follow along and felt with me here. It's just how I teach my workshops. Step by step, and some speed it up. you know, obviously if something takes quite a while to do, then you don't want to just sit there watching me felt for 30 minutes the same area. You can just crack on with that yourself and then just pause and move on to the next section. And obviously when I do the legs, I'll just do one leg. I'm not going to sit there and do 4 for you. But that is looking pretty good. A little bit soft there. You see, you've got this wool. And that's pretty close to this shape here. And what you can also do as well is, you know, it's got this slight dip in the back. So you can actually use your hands to bend the wool, because when it's nicely firmly felted, then it just is really pliable and shapes really easily, and your hands are really important tools. So there you go, you can do that really easily. So I'm just going to finish this, finish felting this so it's nice and firm, and then we are ready to work on the next step of the project. So as you can see now, we've got this nice shape which you will have firmed up, and it's still squishy but really holds its shape. So I've kind of got a bigger end more naturally here, and so this is going to be the bottom end, and then this will be the end where the head goes. So now onto the head shape, and now I'm going to use some carded wool. Again, you can use wool top for this, but I'm going to show you how to use a carded wool. Carded wool is much shorter fibres than wool top, as you can see. Just compare that to the wool top. So the wool top will pull away in longer lengths, and the carded wool is much shorter fibres, and it's just the way the wool's processed. So don't get too chewed up about that. I do have a tutorial on that also, and a great blog post, so I'll pop some links in the description for you. But here we go, we're going to make the head. Now, if you've looked at my previous video tutorials, you'll see that I've done the, you know, I'll tie the knot and then create a round shape, which is really easily done. But I'm going to show you how using a barbecue skewer makes it so easy. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this length of white carded wool, and because it's a Herdwick, so we need a nice white face, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to start and twist this wool around the barbecue skewer really tightly. Now, because it's carded wool, make sure you hold it quite close to the stick, and then just work around the stick area, just gently poke in with your needle. And if you want, you can also use finger guards, which I would definitely recommend if you're just starting out. It just means that you don't poke your finger so much when you're working close to the wool. But I'm used to that now, and I like to work without them if I can. So we're going to create just a kind of egg shape. So let's just get some wool on here. And just felt diagonally as well. And the great thing is with the 38 star needle, it's quite robust, so it's much less likely to break than a finer needle. So there we go, we've started to felt that on there, and then we're just going to wrap the wool around. Can you see how that is really tightly holding on? So we're really not doing a great deal of felting. And you can see that shape starting to develop now. So I'm just going to, again, tangle those fibres so you can see where the front of the head is going to be. So I'm going to start padding down this back area. Just so it holds. And then I'm going to come to the front here, which is where the front of the face is going to be. And it's important that you get this really firm, because you're going to add details to your face, and what you don't want to do is to lose that shape. So again, another reason why it's important that it's firmly felted, because when you add your details, they're going to be a lot easier to add. So we'll just wrap this round a few more times. And I'm just going to pull that off now. And I'm just going to turn that in my hands, and that wool will just kind of hold onto there. And now we are going to carry on with this shape. And when I've got it nicely felted, I'm going to take it off the stick and continue to felt until it's nice and firm. But I can't recommend using a barbecue skewer enough. It will really change the way you needle felt, and what it will do is just make it seem so much easier. Every craft needs to be learned. You know, you're just not going to be able to pick up knitting needles, you know, crochet, macrame, whatever it is you're working. You're not going to be able to pick that up and just be able to do it. That's just not going to happen with any craft. But needle felting is so accessible and it's so easy to pick up. There's no tricky patterns, you know, no tricky stitches. You're just sculpting this wool. Can you see now how that's starting to shape? And I'm just going to go along diagonally, because what I don't want is I don't want a flat head at the back. So I'm just keeping it turning and shaping that as I go. There you go. So we've got a rough shape there. So now if you just take that off your barbecue skewer and continue to work on that shape until it's nice and firm. You don't want any loose bits. Now, as you can see, we've got this really nice shape here. And if I just bring that up for you to have a look at, hopefully that'll focus in on it for you. And you can see, nice shape, still a little bit soft. So I'm just going to felt some more. And I'm going now on a diagonal angle because I'm working along the top and I don't want to keep felting the center because that's nice and firm. But I just want to make sure these top layers are well felted. And what you can also do, great trick, is just to roll it around in your hands, and that can firm it up and also create a really nice shape. So just a simple shape. And I'm just going to roll it and just extend one end a little bit just to thin it out. Can you see how that's just changed that shape slightly there? And let's just keep working that. What we don't want to do is lose that shape now. It doesn't matter if you do. And if, you know, this is your first time needle felting, do not worry about this at all. Your first attempt will not be perfect. It will not be anywhere near perfect. Please don't have your expectations set that high. If you start on somebody else's chapter 5, when you've just picked up chapter 1, it's just not going to happen. So don't be harsh with yourself. Give yourself time to learn. And there we go. So that's quite a good shape. Quite pleased with that. So now we've done the head, we're going to start on the legs, and we're going to use the barbecue skewer again because this gives you really firm legs without the need for any wires or pipe cleaners. If you're wanting to go for something a bit more realistic, then these have pipe cleaners in them and they give it stability and you can pose. But when you're just getting started, I would just focus on not working with wires. I don't work with a lot of wire armature, and actually in this sheep, it's only the legs, the horns, and I think the neck may have... No, the neck doesn't have any wire in either. So we're going to do them on the barbecue skewer, which makes it so simple. So we'll come back and we'll do the legs. So head and body done, as you can see. Now the head does look out of proportion. It looks a little bit small, but it won't be when we finish. By the time we've put sort of the herdwick top piece on. It's going to sit lovely. And I will also show you how to really quickly and easily do a neck, which just gives it a little bit more shape so it doesn't look so squat. But the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create the legs. So I'll show you how to do one. I'm not going to bore you and do all four. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to split down the length of this carded wool because we don't want thick, chunky legs. And I'm just going to twizzle that end so that kind of mats it together. And we are going to keep that wool really close to the barbecue skewer. I'm going to take my needle here. You see how I caught the stick with that, and it didn't bend or break because it's a 38. It's really nice and robust. So just such a brilliant, good all-rounder. I use a 38 star gauge. You can use 38 triangle as well. So we've just got that wool to stick there. And then any way you like, just hold it nice and firm. And just start to twist up the leg. And you go on a diagonal angle, keeping the wool nice and flat. Doesn't want to be lumpy. They want to be nice and smooth. Hold it when you get to this position. And leave the end loose. We want that loose end because that is what is going to attach to the body before we put on that nice curly top layer. There we go. So we can go up a little bit more. Let's have a look. Do a comparison. Yeah. Just remember, we're going to lose the top part of this leg under the curly wool. So I'm just going to take it up a bit further. And felt that around. And the legs are a bit thin, so now we've got that nicely stuck. We just work our way back down, keeping that wool nice and flat and working at a slightly diagonal angle, so we're overlapping each time. And we've got a point here, but that won't matter. We can bring that up to create the feet. And what this does is it allows you to get really firm legs without using any wire. You can do really long legs. I have another video tutorial, which is my parsley hair tutorial. And the legs are so long, but really firm, just using this method. And in fact, the whole hair is made around a barbecue skewer. There we go. You see that there? And then I'm just going to take that off. I may need some more, but possibly not. And I'm just going to bring that down here. You see how just twizzling that round, that wool sticks to itself really easily. So now we can just work on the base here. So this is going to be the foot. And then work along diagonally again. So we just want to firm this down now. Make sure it's really nice, nicely felted, but leave this area here because we want to keep that top bit loose to attach. Whenever you're doing body parts, whether it be legs, necks, ears, always leave a little bit of loose wool at the end. It just makes it a lot easier. If you forget, it doesn't matter, but it does make life easier if you can remember. And then now I'm just putting my finger here. Again, I recommend the finger guards, but if you keep your finger flat, can you see how that's now squishing into shape? And because we haven't done a lot at this end, we've got this nice piece of loose wool. And if you feel that it's maybe going to be a bit short, I don't think it is. You don't want to do, even with the wool, I think that's going to work really well. But you can also really firm it up in your hands. And I just want to flatten this end so it's nice and stable when it's stood. And there really is, when you're working at this size as well, there's no need for an armature at all. I think when you start needle felting, you need to work on your shaping and learning the basics. I think if you go straight into trying to work with a wire armature, you're going to get very frustrated. And like I said, many needle felting projects, in fact, you know, all of your needle felting projects can be created without wire armature. Just depends what your preference is. And if you're working on something much bigger, then yes, you are going to need a little bit of wire for stability, but that could just be in the legs, big floppy ears that you want to sort of stay up. You could use wire for those. And there we go. And then what we'll do is when we come to attach it to the body, we just open up the top part. As you can see, we've got that nice, fresh, unfelted wool, and that will stick onto the body and we'll felt it on. So go off and make another 3 of those and then come back and we'll start on the next part of the project. So now we've almost got our 4 legs done, but before I take this one off the skewer, I just wanted to show you a quick tip for creating some shape at the base of the leg. So if you want to widen that leg at the base, leave it on the stick. Just take a small piece of whatever wool you're using and then just wrap it round the bottom of the foot. Pull that off. Pull that round there. You see it looks a bit messy, but that's okay. Just going to gently felt that in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sort of tuck this wool in at the base of the foot here. Now, if you're a beginner, just ignore this. You don't have to do this. But if you've done a couple of projects and you want to start honing your skills a little bit, then this is just a little bit of detail that you can add. And what I'm doing here is I'm going in diagonally here, so I'm actually thinning the leg out, but you can also do that with your hands, and I shall show you that as well. So can you see how I'm just working through here and just flattening that whilst working diagonally to make sure we've still got that shape at the base. And then when you get to this point, you can also really sort of flatten it, firm it, and smooth it with your hands. And then also, if you want to, if you put your finger there, like so, where you've just created that wider base, if you do that, you can actually shape it with your fingers as well. So again, hands, really super important tools, the most important tools. And also you'll notice that none of my legs are the same length. And there's a reason for that, because I wanted to show you that when you put them on, it doesn't matter. With a sheep, it doesn't matter. Because they're all going to be covered up at the top. So it doesn't matter. And they're going onto the side. And so it doesn't really matter if one's slightly shorter or longer than the other. You can just reposition them. But can you see there how I've just created that nice, slightly wider base? And you could have the leg particularly narrow if you wanted. You could just wrap round a couple of times if you wanted really sort of delicate looking legs, and they would still hold and still be nice and firm. And there I'm just working diagonally, keeping that needle straight all the time though, never bending it. And there we go. Just give that a quick roll and then pull that off. And there we go. So we've got a little hole there where the skewer was, so just pull the wool over. Doesn't really matter, you're not going to see it, you don't have to, but if you just want to finish it by doing that. And then again, you can just finish off the base like so. And again, if you want to give it a final firm, or you want to create even more shape, there you go. Lovely, nicely done. 4 legs ready to be attached to the body. So now we have the body, we have 4 legs and a lovely shaped head here. We are now going to work on the ears, and that looks quite big, but when you actually put it against the side of the head, as you can see, it's going to work perfectly. And I've left this really nice loose tail here, which it will become clear why I've done that. So when you're doing the ears, it's really simple shape. The most important thing really is just have 2 pieces of wool roughly the same size as each other, and then that way, you know, it's going to work out that they are going to be pretty much the same shape and size. And once you've done this one, you can use that as a guide to create the same shape with the second ear. But I'll show you that as we go along. So pop that there. First thing you're going to do is, so we've just got a pinch, and it is really a pinch of carded wool here. Take that little bit of dark wool out. I'm just going to twizzle each end. There are different ways of doing this, but I think for the sheep's ears, this works really well. Twizzle those ends and then fold it in half, and then lay it in your hand like so, and just rub with your fingers. So those 2 pieces of twisted wool are now matted together. And can you see straight away how that is going to create a really nice simple shape? So the first thing you do is just start to mat the wool together. We're not bothered about the shape at the moment. We're just gently felting, and then just as you start to work, bring in those edges, because what happens is if you bring in those edges, you get this nice curve, this nice soft edge with no sort of thin wool visible, so it looks nicely shaped. And can you see straight away where we're going with that? Really, really easy. And the thing is, if you don't get it right the first time, you've only used a tiny amount of wool, don't persevere for hours, just start again. Important thing is, make sure you turn this over, because you're flat felting, that wool will go through, even if you've got a topper on, it will still go through the top of top layer. So if you keep turning, and you're just going through the top of this, you're not pushing right through the mat. So whether you're using a foam mat, a Hessian mat like this one, this double-sided one, a pure wool mat, it doesn't matter. You don't need to be pushing right through. Firstly, that's going to blunt your needles eventually, because you're putting too much pressure on, and it's just not necessary, and your mat isn't going to last as long. And if you've got a foam mat, use a topper as well. It will make it last 10 times longer. Any mat, I always recommend using a topper. Doesn't have to be 100% wool, but as long as, you know, it doesn't, you can use acrylic. You could also use, maybe if you've got an old cotton tea towel, something like that would work. So I'm just turning this ear around now. I'm just going to show you, although it's not necessary because it's really tiny, but when you're doing flat felting, especially if you're doing big ears or big flat felted areas, or pictures, needle felted pictures in particular, then these punch tools are really good. Now this holds a total of 7 needles, but because this has already got some body to it, I've taken 2 out. You just unscrew the top and remove 2, so now it's got 5. And what this does is it gives it a really nice flat finish, and does it super quickly. Look, it's gone out of shape, but don't worry about that. We're going to deal with that in a minute. But always leave this bit long. And then I'm going to, this is where I would recommend you pop on some finger guards if you have them. I don't normally, but I am going to put them on for the video. And then what you're going to do is just shape that ear. So you're going along diagonally with that needle, and you can even actually hold these in your hands with your finger guards on. You can also use a piece of flat folded cardboard. That's a great way to do this. Okay, I'm going to take those off now, and I'm just putting my fingers there, and I'm just shaping. Can you see how creating that nice curve there, and we've got this shape, and how we're doing? They're almost the same size and shape, so I think I just need to pop that on top of the other ear, just as a guide. And they don't have to be exactly the same size, just similar. So I'll probably use a little bit more wool on that one, so I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. So easy to do. There you go. I'm happy with both of those ears, and that's your ears done. Now the last body part that I wanted to show you is optional, but it's in case you want to add a neck to your sheep, because it does add a little bit more dimension and a bit of elegance. But if you're a beginner, don't worry too much about that. You don't have to do it. The head will just felt onto the body, and it will look kind of long when it's on, but it doesn't matter because the wool is going to fill the gap once it's added to the top of the body. So you really need a small, I usually end up with a neck that's really long. So I'm just going to start with a really sort of a slim piece of carded wool, and I'm going to use my barbecue skewer here, my best felting friend, and just mat that end, hold with your finger, and then just start to turn. And again, we're creating just a very simple barrel shape. Can you see? Doesn't actually need to be any longer than that. Make sure that's in there. Pull that and keep it really tight, but the ends we are going to keep loose. There we go. So can you see what I've done with that? And then just turn it around in your hands so that wool just sticks to itself, and then we can start to felt. And as I said, we want to make this shorter now and start firmly felting it. Might get away with this one. I usually end up having to do two because the first one's usually too long, but as I said, I'll just make the top coat a bit woollier so it won't matter. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, and can you see we've still got this loose wool here because I don't want to overfelt that because I'm going to need that to stick it to the base of the head, and the same on this side. So what I'm going to do is just slim down these edges, and you can also squash it with your fingers so it becomes shorter that way. Remember what I said earlier about using your hands as tools? Really, really good. And that's how you create a neck shape. Really simple, but just adds a little bit of elegance to your sheep, and just gives it more dimension really. And it's so easy to add. So if you're a beginner, you could do this, but if you're short on time, you don't need to. And then just going to squish that. So that will probably go under my head because I've got quite a lot of loose wool there, and then I will work from the top down and attach that to the body when I am ready. So I'll pull that off, just poke that in again. I may do it the other way, just looking at the shape actually, because it's wider towards this end, but we'll see when we come to it. It won't really matter. And there we go. So that is going to go something like that under the base of the head, and then we'll shorten it as well when we attach it. In fact, we can do it now. We'll do it now. So I'm just going to sit this loose end here, or this end. Okay, so narrow end in the bottom third of the head. Have a look at it, decide which is going to be the front of the face, and then just push down with your needle in one place repeatedly. And because we've left quite a bit of loose wool, then that should attach quite easily. If you've over felted it, so you can see how that's holding already. If you've over felted it and it's difficult to attach, then put a little bit of a wadding of fresh wool underneath. And yes, you can definitely over felt. If your project starts to become very hard, then you are over felting, and what will actually happen eventually is it will start to go soft again because you're actually then breaking the fibres down with the needle. So yes, you can over felt. But that's usually if you're just repeatedly trying to fix one area, the shape, and if you're constantly felting in the same spot, then that wool may start to go soft again. And you may need to remove that particular part you're attaching or add some fresh wool And then just make sure you can still pull it around at this point. So you make sure it wants to be at the back of the head, towards the back. And then go down the side of the neck there. Can you see how I'm doing that? That needle is straight, and what that also is doing is shortening this. Now obviously I'm using white because it's Herdwick sheep, but you know what, this technique just works for every sheep. It doesn't matter what shape or size it is. And then what I may do is just pop a little bit of fresh wool, because we don't actually have, on a Herdwick sheep, we don't actually have any wool on the head. So I'm just going to pop a little band of wool around there and just ever so gently attach. And can you see how that, if you just use your needle to drag it around, see how that join disappears really quickly. And just tuck that under, and there we go. And that is ready to attach to the top of the body. So head and neck is done, body is done, legs are done. We may add a little tail later, and the ears are done. We are now ready to start putting it all together, and also before we do that, just adding some little details on the ears and creating this really nice detail on the face. And the Herdwicks have little dark areas in the ears, so we'll pop a little bit of that on. And some of them have a little bit of dark patches on the knees as well, so we may even do that. Now when you look at a Herdwick sheep, you will see on their ears, when you look at a picture, they have these little dark sort of grey details in. So I'm just going to quickly pop that in. Got a little bit of grey carded wool here. It's the quickest thing to do. And you don't need much, just a tiny little amount. And what you don't want to do is over felt it. You kind of just want to tack it on almost with your felting needle. There we go. And that is it really. It's just a sense of detail. Same on the other one. Doesn't have to be in the same position or identical, because they're not. But what you don't want to do is felt in the same place, because then you end up with lines. So you almost want to sort of scrape the wool around and then just tack it into place. And then here, where we're not going to be, these will be attached to the back of the head, we can more firmly felt those little areas in so it holds. And if you wanted it to be even less noticeable, you could just trim across the top with a pair of scissors. And then what I'm going to do is, I find the easiest way to get the ear placement absolutely correct is to, if possible, join the ears together before you start. And then you can just pop the ears on the back of the head. So these loose bits that we kept, we're just going to bring those together, see whereabouts that's going to sit. And that is going to be about right. And then just felt those together, flip it over and do the other side. Don't over felt it, because we're going to attach it to the back of the head. And then we can do a little bit more shaping when it's actually on the sheep. But just move that over in case we lose that detail there. And that's it for the ears. With regards to the knees, you'll sometimes see them again with a similar patch on the knees, which looks like they've got scrubbed knees, but it is kind of cute. So again, you can just pop a little patch on, like so, if you wish. Doesn't have to be on all knees, it can just be on a couple of them. I'm not going to overdo that, because I might change the placement slightly when it's on, depending on where it is. And that's a little bit of detail there. And then the next detail we are going to do is going to be the face. And you need the tiniest amount of contrasting wool for this, a really tiny wisp. And I am going to use this Jacob wool top. It's not a jet black, and I sometimes find that pure black is a little bit harsh for some details. So it's so dark though, it's going to be a really nice, lovely contrast. And you take the smallest amount and you twist it in your fingers. And that's why I've used the tops. You can use the carded wool, but if you're using the carded wool, then it does break more easily. And you just kind of twist that. And I'm just going to pop that there. Now, all the face is a V shape, a line, and then a line with a slight curve at the bottom. So you can do it in 3 sections. And I'll show you how easy it is to do. Now, it takes a little bit of practice to get this right because you don't want it really thick. It wants to look quite delicate. On this one, she's got a big smile on her face. And this one, again, he's got quite a smile on his face. So you just kind of end up with whatever way it goes, really. So I am just going to show you how easy that is to do. Now, because we've got the neck on, we've got a really good central point, and we want to decide where we're going to start. So this is the area we're going to be working in, and I am just going to put a point where the V is going to meet. So I am going to, that's a finer needle, I'm going to use this one. I'm just going to poke that in through there, just so you've got a marker. And then I'm going to pop that over that hole there. And now I'm going to use a finer needle. You can use your 38 star. You can use it for the whole project. I'll show you by starting with that one. But when you're doing the facial details, it does help sometimes if you have a finer needle so you don't squash the face. But because we've felted this really firmly, it doesn't actually matter. But that hole that we made, I am just pushing that wool into there so that it sticks out like so. And then I'm going to twizzle it. Have a look at the position again. And I am going to felt that first line of the V into here. And hold this here and then allow this to be pulled into the face. So you don't want that to pull out. So if you hold that, because we're going to trim it. There we go. Can you see how we've done that? And then trying to get them as symmetrical as possible. Give it another little twist. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to push down with that needle. And then I'm going to hold there. And I'm going to continue to do that. And once that's on, you can then get to grips with it properly. Okay, so if it's wonky or really off kilter, then you can just pull it out and start again. And then you get a pair of scissors and you just snip off the excess. There we go. Take that away. Just make sure there's no loose ends sticking out. And that is the first part done. And I'm just going to tidy up this bit here. We've got a little bit of distortion, so this is where you can come back with your needle, and this is a fine 40 triangular needle. So what this does is it allows you to felt a little more without losing the shape. It's much more delicate, breaks much more easily, which is why we tend not to use it for the bulk of the bodies. And again, in there, and you can just pull any wool just over the edges just to soften it. And there we go. And you see how dark that looks, and that isn't black, that's a very dark brown. So you could go lighter if you wanted. So we've got this in here. Now we're going to join that V with a tiny piece. I'll just take a little bit off what I've cut. Just going to twist that again just to mat it a little bit, and we're going to pull that so it actually goes through the center of the V. So just gently poke down. I'm using the 40 triangle again. You can use your 38. Just be gentle and don't overdo it, just till it holds, and then we can trim that off and just poke that excess in. So that is our third line that is done. And now we want to take this down here. We don't want it to go under the head because we don't want to lose the mouth. So it doesn't need to be too long. So keep your finger there so that it doesn't come out. Twizzle it again if you wish, just to thin that line. And just go through here very gently. And rather than cut that, we can actually use that for the next part. So twizzle again, slight curve, and hand there to stop that wool coming out. There we go. And trim that edge. And those loose ends there, just tidy them in. We can come back to this later. And we can also as well, we can move this, we can change the shape of that if we wanted to. And then one final piece. So just a little bit of the loose wool we started with at the beginning. I'm going to pop that right in the middle there. I'm going to twist it to get rid of those loose bits. I'm going to put my finger on it there so we don't pull this section out. I'm going to try and guess where that's going to end up. It's a bit like an alien at the moment. I'm just going to take that out. It's a little bit wider than the other one. I'm going to trim that. Bring that in there. That's better. So you'll put, when you first start doing this, in fact when you've done it for a while, you usually end up doing it a few times, and mine isn't perfect by any means, but the trick is keep it really thin and really wispy, because you don't want big thick lines. It just makes it look kind of mean, I think. So you want nice thin delicate lines, and then if you want to make him look a little bit more jolly, you can just turn those edges up. There. That went quite well for a video tutorial actually. I normally have to repeat that process, but I'm pretty pleased with that. So there we go. That is the hardest detail to do on the entire thing. That is it. I'm going to pull those in. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to squeeze those cheeks in with my hand, with my fingers really hard, because I want to give it a bit of more of a square jaw, as you can see. And then I'm going to just flatten the top of its head as well, because the sheep's head tends to be flat and square jawed. And again, you can do this by going in diagonally as well. And And if you're a bit more advanced, then you can add more details, like this Hebridean sheep. You can start to sort of really go to town with details and eyes. But if this is your first project or you're just a beginner, then just keep it simple to start with. Don't overwhelm yourself, and you can work up to those more advanced projects. The great thing with these projects is you can keep them as simple or as advanced as you like. And there we go. And if that neck's a bit skew-iff, just pull it over. And let's just get this fixed on properly here. And now I'm going to pop the ears on. So lay the ears down. Just check where they are going to sit. If you've got a picture of a herdwick, it's really useful. Wrap it around the back of the head and poke in with your needle. Don't worry about any visible lines on this. We'll cover those up, and also it's going to have sort of like herdwick have a buzz cut, what I call a buzz cut. They're quite unique, I think, in that style of finish on the top of their heads. So I'm just going to make sure that that's tacked on, and then pull these out. And then I'm going to do it a little bit long there. So to shorten those ears, can you see how now I'm pushing the needle straight in, and it's pulling this ear towards this side. So it's actually shortening it. Have a look. That's a bit better. And then this one probably doesn't need so much doing. So we'll just pop that in like so, and make sure they're nice and firmly felted on. But we'll move them about later. And then I'm just going to just tidy up this little bit here, give it a bit more shape. It's a bit square when I look at it from the front. You can nip them as well, like so. Again, use your fingers, because that's nice and firmly felted. You can create more shape. And again, if you come here and just felt it down a little further so they're not sticking right out. That's better. And then what I'm going to do is take some of the same carded wool we used to create the ears and the head, and I'm just going to put a little patch on there just to cover up that join and any of that grey wool that has come through. Again, not too bothered about getting this perfectly flat, just make sure it looks part of the sheep. And this section here is going to have the sort of spiky haircut that they have. So we've got a bit of a lump here, so we're just going to go diagonally down like that until it becomes, or looks like it's become, part of the head. And so if you just carry on tidying that up until you're happy with it, and we'll come back and we can start putting it together and popping some eyes on. We're now ready to start assembling all the lovely body parts we've made, and I have started by just sewing on this glass beaded eye you can see here. And I like to use glass beads because they really make the eyes pop and give it a shine. And I think with sheep, unless you're actually doing all the details for the eyes, if you just pop a little bit of black on, it looks a bit flat. So I do like to use the glass beads, and that one's sewn on. I'll quickly show you how I do that. And then you can also get these ones that are post beads that you just push into the eye and pop a little bit of glue on the end. So they're really easy to put in. So when you're doing the eye, what you can do so that it doesn't protrude too far is what I do, I generally put the needle through like that so I know where about the placement is going to be. And then on this side here, as I've done on the other side, I'm just going to poke a few times just to make a little indentation in the face, just so that that bead is going to sit in there nicely when I sew it on. The first thing I do is go through the indentation just through to the back of the head. Don't worry about any thread showing, because it will get rid of all that. And then come back through a second time, and then get your bead. It's got a little hole in the middle, sorry, and just pop that through like so. And you can either go back through the hole or underneath, it really doesn't matter. And as long as you make sure you keep going through backwards and forwards through the same spot. And then what will happen is, after a few stitches, you'll see that I start to hold in there more firmly, and then just keep sewing until that's nice and secure. There we go. I would probably do that for a little bit longer, but I'll leave it at that. And then this is going to be covered up, so don't worry about any thread showing. But if it's going to be just left bare like that, just pop a little bit of white wool on. Now, as you can see, there's I've just trimmed this side. If you've got a lot of fluff going on, little bits of wisp, and you want it nice and neat, then just use the flat of your scissors, and that really tidies up all those wisps. But they don't bother me too much. And it's something I usually do at the end if it's necessary. And then just give that face a little bit of a squidge again, and you see we've got a really nice shape there now. I will put the sort of little buzz cut on at the end because I don't want to flatten it while I'm handling it. So then what we're going to do now is we're going to take the body and we are going to attach the legs. So you don't want them too near the front, you just want them sort of slightly set back, like so. And then remember how we left all this lovely wispy wool, nice fresh wool at the end. Don't worry about how neat it is, about the legs being in this exactly the same place. It won't matter because we're going to be covering it with this, or whatever wool you are using or top coat you are planning on having. So I'm just going to pop this leg here. Just so it holds. There we go. And I'm going to push through a little bit more so we get that wool going through into the body a little bit deeper. So that's quite nicely fixed on now. And then I'm just going to come down the side a little bit, because all of this will be invisible, so it doesn't matter if I flatten it, but I do want it to be nice and firm so it holds. And then just to bulk out the side, you don't have to do this, but I like to bulk out the tops a little bit. And again, don't worry about seams, joins, neatness. This is all going to be covered up. But what it does do, it gives you extra stability with the fresh wool and just builds out the sides of the legs. And that is how easy it is to attach the legs. So then what you do is you just work the rest of them, and the important thing is to make sure this is level. Don't worry about where this sits on the body, it's this bit here. So for example, I did this extra long, so I want that to be adjacent to the front leg, and you can see that will come further up the body, but it won't matter. The important thing is this measurement here. Don't worry about this. So go off and do the other 3 legs, and we'll come back and we'll carry on with the rest of the features. We're back and all 4 legs are on, and I've deliberately not made mine of equal length just so I can show you how easy it is to adjust them. So when I put this here, I've got a bit of a lean. This is going to be the front of my sheep, and I've got a bit of a lean. It's a bit high at the back end. So what you can do is you can either pull the front end legs just slightly to lengthen them. It's really, really simple to do. Or if you have a really one that's particularly long, you can actually push up, as we did with the ears on the back of the head, push the needle up through the leg, and that will draw the wool in and shorten that. So you're going in the direction you want the length to be pulled up. But as you can see, no wires needed. And this doesn't need to be white, this head. It could be the grey, but it's just, this shows you, it stands out a little bit more, and you can see exactly what I've done. And that's the beauty of doing the sheep. You know, you can get away with so much because so much of it is covered, which is why sheep are perfect for beginners. Okay, so I think, yep, just going to pull these front ones a little bit more again, because I want the back to tilt towards the floor and not up towards the sky, just slightly. Otherwise it'll be top heavy. So just felt those legs in a little bit to shorten them so that the back legs are slightly shorter. Yeah, that's good. So now we come to attaching the head. And if you remember, when we put the neck on, we left all this lovely fresh wool here. And this is going to sit, doesn't want to be too far forward on the front. It just wants to sit really above those legs, because here we're going to cover all of this in some really nice wool. Don't worry about positioning to start with. Get it in the rough position you want it, and then just start to poke with your needle. And you can see that, yeah. See how that's starting to hold. And because this is nice and firm here, once we've got it in securely, it's not going to flop about. And then I'm going right through the back of the neck here. And you see how that now is really starting to become firmly attached. And if you feel like you need some more wool around here to widen that base, just pop a little bit around like so. Just wrap it around like a little scarf really. Don't over felt it, but just make sure that it's nicely felted at the front and there's no visible attachment, and that is why you use your needle diagonally. And if you wanted to, you could use a finer needle. If you want to know what your needle sizes are, and you've got needles but don't know what gauge they are, if it's not very bendy, it's going to be a lower number. So that's a 38. It's got a little bit of bend, but it's quite robust. This is a 40, so the higher the number, the finer the needle. Can you see how much more that's bending? So when we get to this point, when the wool has started to be felted quite firmly and we're just really working on these top layers, then we can use a finer needle. But as I said, when you start, 38 or a 36 even, but a 38 really does most projects from start to finish. I find a 36 a bit too heavy and can only use it for so long before I need to change to a 38, so I tend to just stick to a 38. And then sticking out a bit here, so I'm just going to pop that in, but I'm not going to worry because we're going to have all of this on it. So continue with that. Make sure it's nice and firmly attached. and then we're now ready to start our top coat. Now, because I am doing a Herdwick, I am going to be using these lovely curly Gotland locks. But if you wanted to do a Herdwick with maybe something a little bit more traditional, and it's lovely protective coat, then you can also do this kind of finish, which is just Herdwick wool. I've actually used Herdwick wool for this because it's beautiful and coarse. Absolutely gorgeous to use as a top coat, the Herdwick wool. And then I've added the coat in layers. Now I do have a video tutorial for that, so it's a little bit more advanced, but no reason why a beginner couldn't do it if they just had, you know, some time, a little extra time and patience. But there's a video tutorial for that showing you how to add long coats to your animals, and you can then use it for any animal, and I'll pop that in the description. The other thing is, if you don't have curly wool, it doesn't matter. If you've just got wool, this is just wool yarn, and it doesn't have to be pure wool, but look at this great effect. And as you can see, I've gone for a really sort of flat sheep. I've really flattened that style down, and I really love that. So this is just really sort of quite coarse wool yarn. I think I use it for some rug hooking, but it just has gone on beautifully. So you just sort of hold it and curl it as you go. And then there's some absolutely incredible art yarns out there. This is a blue-faced Leicester art yarn that has been plant dyed and hand spun, and you can add some really fun details. So just go to town with it. Whatever your preferred style is. Again, with the Hebridean, I've gone with this because the Hebridean has a lovely sort of deep brown coat with little lighter areas. I've got this really nice rare breed curly wool here, but just, you know, you can usually work with what you've got. And if you're doing a white coat, then I like to use the Wensleydale locks, which are beautiful. And I have someone who I get these from, and she just washes them so meticulously. It's absolutely lovely. It's almost pure white. It's just gorgeous. But we are going to go with this lovely Gotland wool tops, and I'm just going to plonk a big chunk on. It's not, there's no exciting technique here. It's just pop it on and then start poking. And what you want to do is not felt the whole lot on, because what you don't want to do is lose those curls and flatten it. So what we'll do is we'll get this on quite loosely the entire way around, including under the legs. You probably need, for one of these sheep, around 10 grams of locks. Should do the job quite nicely. Maybe 15, but with a sheep this size, 10 grams is usually more than enough, and you can sort of spread it out. And then I'm going to work my way around and come back, and we shall just add the final finishing touches. Now the coat's all on. Look what a transformation you have. And I've just been around and trimmed all these little wispy bits that were sticking out. I haven't done it too much because I quite like that sort of earthy finish, and it's a sheep. But I've just gone around and trimmed, and I'm just going to, I had to take the scubby knee off because it was up near his hips, not his knees. So you can actually do this when the legs are made. Just go in gently, careful with your fingers if you're doing it this way. And you can just add a little bit of detail like so. And you can do that around all of the legs or just the front two, whatever you want. But it's entirely up to you. And as you can see, this curly coat is on now. It's really bulked out the sheep. And that neck, it doesn't look like an alien anymore. It looks like it should be there. So what we're going to do now is really the final finishing touch, which is this great buzz cut that we're going to put on here. And I really hope you've enjoyed felting with me. I hope you've learned a lot. You know, it's such an amazing craft. It's so addictive and it's so accessible to everyone. There's no, like I say, no tricky patterns, no fiddly stitches. It's just so easy to get stuck in, if you pardon the pun. But make sure you subscribe as well down below, and then you won't miss a notification for any new tutorials that pop up. So I've got here, and I'm going to use wool top for this. You could, if you wanted to, use a reverse needle like this, and what this does is it pulls out the wool, so it pulls it back out. But I think a herdwick needs something a bit more distinctive than that. So I've got this lovely, I think this is Shetland wool top, and all I'm going to do is lay that across the top of its head, and I'm going to work a line down. We're just felting that one line in because all of this is going to be trimmed. So we're going to do a few layers. Bring that forward. Do we need one there? I don't think so. And then I'm going to do another layer. I'll probably do 2 or 3 at the most. So pop that one in and just go along and just felt it into the top of the head. Just a simple line, and that just holds it. And this is really how you do the long coats as well. It's, you know, it's quite easy to do. So bring that down just by the side of the ear a little bit, because it does come down the head slightly when you look at the pictures. And then you just snip that off. Looks a bit ruthless. And a bit long at the back there. And you see how we've got this lovely buzz cut going on here. And then to just snip into it so it is less blunt. A bit long there. And again, I'd probably spend a little bit more time on that, but that is pretty much okay. Just take that long bit off there. There we go. And as a final optional touch, if you wanted, you could pop a little tail on the back there. Really easy to make, just like you did the legs, but a lot softer, you know, really loosely felted, either on a mat or around a barbecue skewer, and then just attach the unfelted wool to its bottom. But I'm just going to leave mine like that. So there we go, one beautiful herdwick sheep, my favourite sheep. I've been making these since 2014, can you believe? And I still love them. So thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again in the Felt Hub.